Get up instant! The sun is already high and you're still sleeping like a log. The store won't open itself. Sarah's mother's sharp voice crashed into her morning sleep like a clap of thunder. The young woman flinched and opened her eyes. The dawn was barely breaking outside her window. It was around 5 in the morning. There were more than 2 hours until the store's opening. But her mother, Patricia, was already standing in her daughter's doorway, drumming her fingers against the doorframe with that familiar impatient rhythm. "Mom, it's still so early!" Sarah tried to protest, but fell silent under her mother's stern glare. "Have you lost your mind? We need to unload the new shipment, stock the shelves, and count yesterday's receipts. You think money grows on trees?" Patricia pressed her lips into a thin line, her signature expression of disapproval. "And don't forget, the tax inspector is coming today. Everything better be perfect." Sarah nodded mechanically as she got out of bed. Every morning started the same way, with her mother's nitpicking and an endless list of tasks. Working in the family store had long since turned into a voluntary but not really prison sentence, where the only reward was a grudging "not bad" from her mother on particularly good days. After her father's death 5 years ago, Patricia seemed to freeze from the inside out. Her entire life became centered around the store, a small grocery market on the outskirts of their rural Missouri town. She demanded the same fanatical dedication from her daughter, not noticing that she was slowly suffocating everything vibrant and alive within her. Sarah's only ray of light was her grandfather, Patricia's father. He lived in the house next door and often dropped by to check on his granddaughter. He was the one who noticed her love for painting and secretly brought her sketchbooks and watercolors. "You've got a real gift, sweetheart," Grandpa would say, examining her latest drawing. "Can't let the talent go to waste. Your mama will understand eventually." But her mother didn't understand. For Patricia, any of Sarah's interests not related to the store were a waste of time. All the sketchbooks and paints had to be hidden under a loose floorboard. Sarah had deliberately walked one loose under her bed. At night, when her mother was asleep, she would retrieve her treasures and draw by the light of a small desk lamp. On paper, bright flowers came to life, along with intricate patterns and portraits of people she'd seen in the store during the day. They were the only hours when she felt truly alive. "You are just like your father," Grandpa would sigh. "He was a dreamer too. Maybe that's why your mama fight it so hard. She's scared of losing another person she loves." But a month ago, Grandpa passed away too. His heart gave out in his sleep, quietly and not disturbing anyone, just as he had lived his final years. For Sarah, it was a devastating blow. She felt like she'd lost her last support, the last person who saw her as more than just free labor. "No point in crying," her mother had cut her off, noticing her daughter's red eyes. "Life goes on. You've got a job, a roof over your head. What more do you need?" But Sarah needed something else. She felt suffocated within the store's four walls, among endless boxes, invoices, and cash register receipts. Her soul yearned for freedom, for paints and canvases, for a real life full of color and meaning. That evening, while sorting through her grandfather's belongings, she found an envelope with her name on it. Inside were his saving and a note. "For art classes in the city. Don't let anyone steal your dreams, sweetheart." Sarah clutched the envelope to her chest, feeling tears roll down her cheeks. For the first time in ages, hope flickered in her heart. She didn't know yet how she would use this unexpected inheritance, but she was determined. She wouldn't let her mother control her destiny anymore. A week later, a tall, dark-haired guy in mechanical coveralls walked into their store, and Sarah's life began spinning like a whirlwind. Mike's appearance wasn't entirely coincidental. His auto repair shop was right across the street. Every morning he'd stop by for coffee and sandwiches for breakfast. But that day something went sideways. While trying to fish some change out of his coverall pocket, he accidentally knocked over his cup of hot coffee right onto the counter. "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I'll clean this up." He looked around helplessly, searching for something to wipe up the mess. Sarah couldn't help but laugh. The look on the clumsy customer's face was just too comical. Thank heavens Patricia was in the stockroom, or there would be been hell to pay. "Here you go." She handed him a roll of paper towels, still smiling. "Just be careful, it is still hot." "Thanks." Mike looked up and froze. Their eyes met, and something shifted in the air between them. I'm Mike. Work at the garage across the street." "Sarah," she replied softly, feeling her cheeks flush. From that day, Mike started coming by more often. First for coffee, then for cigarettes. Fourth, as she later discovered, he didn't even smoke. Then just to see what's new. Each time he'd find some excuse to linger at the counter for a few minutes when there weren't other customers around. One day, seizing a moment when Patricia was off at the wholesale market, he finally worked up the courage. "Hey, Sarah, how about we go somewhere? Maybe catch a movie or just take a walk?" Sarah froze. Her heart was racing a mile a minute. My mom doesn't allow it. She thinks it's all foolishness." "Well, we don't have to tell your mom," Mike winked. "I'll wait for you tomorrow at 7, behind the corner by the old oak tree. What do you say?" And she came. For the first time in forever, she lied to her mother about an emergency inventory check and slipped out of the house. They walked through the quiet evening streets, talking about everything under the sun. And Sarah felt incredibly light and free. "What's this?" Mike noticed a sketchbook peeking out of her bag. "May I take a look?" Sarah hesitated but handed it over. Besides her grandfather, she'd never shown her drawings to anyone. "Holy cow, you're a real artist!" Mike whistled admiringly as he flipped through the pages. "Why aren't you in an art school with talents like this?" "Mom thinks it's a waste of time," Sarah replied quietly. "Says I need to focus on real work, not silly fantasies." "That's ridiculous. You've got a genuine gift. Hey, you know what? My aunt teaches at the art school in Kansas City. How about I set up a meeting?" Their secret meeting became regular. Every evening after the store closed, Sarah would rush to the old oak tree where Mike waited for her. They'd walk through the park, sit in the tiny coffee shop on the edge of town, or sometimes just wander the streets hand in hand. Mike brought her real professional paints and brushes. "It's a gift from my aunt," he fibbed, for Sarah suspected he'd spent his own savings. Now she painted every 3 minutes she could find, and her work kept getting better and better. But one day, Patricia found the art supplies. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. Her mother had decided to do some unexpected cleaning in Sarah's room. "What is this?" Her scream could be heard clear out to the street. "Is this what you do instead of working? And what's this? Who is this boy in the drawing?" On the desk lay a portrait of Mike, Sarah's latest work that she hadn't managed to hide. "Mom, please listen." Sarah began, but Patricia was already tearing the drawings into tiny pieces. "No more of this art nonsense. No more dates. You work at the store, that's your future. And don't you dare talk back to your mother." That evening, for the first time, Sarah didn't make it to her meeting with Mike. She sat locked in her room, listening to her mother dramatically hammering boards across her window. "Just in case you get any ideas about sneaking out." Tears rolled down her cheeks, but inside her heart, a resolution was hardening. She wouldn't let herself be broken anymore. 2 days later, Patricia's worst nightmare came true. The tax inspection arrived at the store, and Mike's presence there wasn't a coincidence at all. The tax audit uncovered serious violations in the store's documentation. Patricia darted between the inspectors trying to explain something, anything, but it was futile. The fines threatened to bankrupt them. "You know, there might be a way to settle this," the chief inspector said, looking meaningfully at Mike. He nodded and pulled out a stack of documents. "If you agree to sell the store at market value, we can overlook the violations." It turned out Mike wasn't just a mechanic. His father owned a chain of auto repair shops and convenience stores across the state. They'd been eyeing this area for expansion for a while. You set this all up!" Patricia went white with rage. "No, Mom," Sarah said quietly. "You brought this on yourself. I know about the under-the-table cash, the off-the-books employees, everything." A month later, she and Mike tied the knot. The wedding was modest, just a few of his friends and his parents. Patricia didn't show up, even though Sarah had left an invitation in her mailbox. Susan, Mike's mother, welcomed her new daughter-in-law like her own child. She was everything Patricia wasn't: gentle, understanding, with a warm smile and kind eyes. "Sweet girl," she said, hugging Sarah after the ceremony. "You've got a real family now." But the happiness proved short-lived. Patricia, after receiving the money for the store, seemed to lose her mind completely. She stalked her daughter outside their house, sent endless text messages full of curses, and once even tried to set Mike's car on fire. "You've ruined my life," she screamed into the phone. "I raised you, gave up everything for you, and this is how you repay me? You ungrateful little snake." Sarah was hanging on by a thread. She attended her art classes, cooked for her husband, tried to be the perfect daughter-in-law, but something inside her had cracked. At night she'd wake up in cold sweats, haunted by nightmares. "I can't take it anymore," she whispered one night, sitting in the kitchen with her mother-in-law. It was in the middle of the night, and Mike was working a late shift at the garage. "Maybe Mom's right. Maybe I really am—" "Stop right there," Susan took her hands. "Look at me, Sarah. What your mother's doing, that's not love. It's sick. She won't stop until she's destroyed you completely. But she's my mother. Listen," Susan paused, choosing her words carefully. "I had a best friend once. Her husband beat her, but she forgave him everything. For the kids' sake, for the family's sake. You know how it ended? Very, very bad. And the kids grew up thinking it was normal to endure abuse because it's family." Sarah sat silent, tears streaming down her face. "Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to live. Really live." Susan pulled an envelope from her robe pocket. "Remember Mike's cousin in San Francisco? She's got an apartment for rent, right by the ocean, and there's an excellent art school there." The next morning, she and Mike submitted their transfer request to the San Francisco branch of the company. The confirmation came through within a week. They packed in secret, walking through the nights. Susan helped box everything up, stuffing warm clothes into duffel bags. "The wind's different by the ocean, honey. You'll need this." On their last evening in town, Sarah finally found her courage. She drove to her mother's house and left a letter in the mailbox. "Mom, I'm leaving. Don't try to find me. I'm not your puppet anymore. Goodbye." Already in the car pulling out of town, she took out her sketchbook. On the first page was an unfinished portrait of her mother, the old version of her from long ago who used to read bedtime stories and tuck her in at night. Sarah turned the page. The blank sheet stared back at her like a new life, empty and full of possibilities. "Ready?" Mike asked, squeezing her hand. "Ready," she answered, feeling something new growing inside her, something that felt like freedom. In her purse lay a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines. She hadn't told her husband yet. Life was beginning anew, and this time she would write it herself, with her own colors, her own hand, with anyone else's orders or commands. Back in Missouri, Patricia stood at the window of her empty house, crumpling an unsent letter of apology in her hands, one she never found the courage to put in her daughter's mailbox. Some mistakes can be fixed. Some wounds don't heal. But life goes on, for those who find the strength to start over. The morning California sun painted their new apartment in shades of gold. Sarah stood at the easel by the bay window, her growing belly just beginning to show under her paint-splattered smoke. On the canvas, colors danced and swirled. No more hidden sketchbooks, no more midnight secrets. Her first gallery showing was scheduled for next month, thanks to connection from her art school professors who had recognized her talent immediately. Mike came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, careful of her bump. "Beautiful," he whispered, looking at the painting. "A sunrise over the ocean, breaking through storm clouds." "It's called Breaking Free," Sarah said softly, leaning back against him. "It's about—" "I know what it's about," he smiled, kissing her temple. On the refrigerator, held by a magnet, was a postcard from Susan. She was planning to visit next month, excited about her first grandchild. Below it was a newspaper clipping from their hometown. Patricia's store had been transformed into a modern convenience store, part of a chain. The article mentioned that the former owner had moved away, no forwarding address. Sarah touched her belly, feeling the baby kick. Sometimes healing means letting go, she thought. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is turn the page and start a new chapter. That evening, as the fog rolled in from the Pacific, Sarah added the final touches to her painting. In the corner, almost hidden in the clouds, was a tiny figure letting go of a balloon, free at last, soaring toward tomorrow.